2021. Would everybody join me in Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, can I get a motion to approve tonight's agenda if there are no changes that anybody needs to note?
I am going, I don't know whether it would come under, I have a public, not a public comment, but I will have a comment that I want to bring a suggestion of for us to mull over for a month and maybe next month act on something.
Can you hold that for planning board member comments?
Yes.
Okay. We'll just move on with the agenda now. Anybody have any addition to the agenda? Can I get a motion to approve?
I'll motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
Thank you. Let's take a look. I'm sorry, got to vote. Three-step process here. Been working hard today. It's hot out there. All in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None seen. Now we'll move on. Wes, you just want to quickly explain what the second set of minutes is corrected?
Yes, sir.
As far as John Finelli's comments were.
Yes, sir. Town Clerk Sheila Kane. We did receive comments. I think John Finelli's replied to all, or it might have just been us and you. But at any rate, these minutes have been revised based on comments submitted by John Finelli, mostly correcting what he did and did not vote on at that meeting. So this is a revised version for your consideration tonight. You all can certainly make further revisions tonight if y'all see fit.
Okay, did anybody have anything in these minutes outside of what Wes just said? John Finelli had any corrections that needed to be noted? I had one, and it's just a typo, on page 7 on the original ones that you sent. It would be, let's see, line 283
Yes, sir.
says, probably need to strike one of those professional. It says, under need and relationship, add a professional licensed healthcare professional. Probably one of those professionals needs to go.
I'll take out the first one.
Either one.
Okay.
Other than that, they look real good. Easy to follow. Thank you, Sheila. Nice job. Okay. Anybody else have any corrections on those minutes? Well, then I would entertain a motion to approve with John Finelli's corrections and that one typo.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the April 19th, 2021 Planning Board meeting.
I'll second.
Third step.
Okay. I need to put vote in big letters here. All in favor of approving the amended minutes from April 19th, 2021, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None seen? Right. Well, while we've got those minutes out from April's meeting, and I kind of marked up the set that you sent out before, Wes, as far as just what we talked about and with this new business that we're getting ready to get into. I don't see anybody here public comment wise. I mean, are anybody doing Zoom these days, or is it just
It would
show
be-
up and talk?
Yeah, you're on YouTube. Live.
Yeah, yeah.
There's no comment.
Okay. Well, we'll roll on with public comment and go to new business, but let's flip back over and just briefly, since we kind of tabled talking about this at the last meeting, waiting for direction from town attorney, if we can go back over and start on part 2, temporary healthcare structures, and just look at the minutes and, one question I had, Wes, was when we moved into this new ZTA, 2106, does 2102 go away, or does that still stay as eaves, or how are we treating that? Because it got put aside by town council as well.
Right, so you all did recommend, they were split, the eaves part and then the temporary healthcare structures. I mean, so now we have temporary healthcare structures as ZTA 2106, which is different from the version that you all recommended.
Right, yeah.
And the eaves ZTA also has, I think that remained as 2102, but it only kept part 1.
Okay,
The town council has tabled that at least once. So it keeps 2102. This that you have before you tonight is new language, 2106.
yeah. I mean, and I'm aware of all that, but I was just curious as to, for bookkeeping wise, how does the eaves, does it just drop into, is it going to be created into a new ZTA since it had?
It's on the agenda for the next council
Yeah,
meeting,
okay.
July 6th, I believe.
Mhm.
And it's going to be, they have been and will be considering it again as ZTA 2102, I believe. is what it is.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll jump in, but hold kind of your place on what we talked about in April, and when we're going back and forth with our discussion on ZTA 2106. Everybody has what Ben Gallup has given the town. I called Wes this morning and asked him to try to make some requirement bullets for discussion on this ZTA, because I think it'll be helpful in maybe understanding what we can allow as a town and what North Carolina dictates that we have to have. So, Wes, I'm going to get you, if you don't mind, to just read the analysis out, the staff analysis.
Yes, sir. At the March 2nd, 2022 Town Council meeting, and this is with respect to ZTA 2106, the council instructed town staff to take valuable elements out of the adoption draft of the town code update written by Code Right for review by the planning board and the town council for future consideration. The proposed amendments to section 36-168 temporary uses are a result of state law changes from session law 2014-94, which establishes temporary family healthcare structures as permitted accessory uses in any single-family residential zoning district on lots zoned for single-family detached dwellings. The planning board recommended approval of Part 2 of ZTA 2102 with amendments at the April 19, 2021 planning board meeting. As requested by town staff, the town council tabled their consideration of Part 2 of ZTA 2102 at the May 4th, 2021 council meeting so that the town attorney could review and comment on the proposed language. Following his review, the town attorney provided the enclosed comments as well as revised language for consideration, which you all have before you tonight.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'll start things off with maybe talking about the memo that Ben Gallup sent to Wes and Cliff about what we had sent 4 conditions that we suggested. I guess it would have been conditions tagged on to temporary health structures. Didn't we basically have 4 conditions that we had suggested?
Yeah, they weren't necessarily conditions. It was revised language. You all
Yeah.
recommended approval of it with amendments, and it was 4 amendments, and he's listed them there, 1 through 4. Septic wastewater connection requirement,
Mhm.
caregiver being licensed, healthcare professional, meeting all state and local requirements, and then meeting mobile home requirements.
Yeah. And that goes back to the minutes, which checks out with, what we had concerns about. And so basically Ben has, what he has done is he has taken North Carolina General Statute 160D-915 and basically word for word put it into the ZTA that we have before us tonight. I mean, if there's a half a dozen words different in there, I will be surprised. Which, I mean, he's telling us 2 things. That this is a state law that supersedes anything that we can basically do as a town, but then we need to discuss how we want to enter into making suggestions, approving, disapproving what we have before us. So I would say, let's hear some ideas and, concerns to what we're looking at with this ETA.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I would just like to speak to that bulleted list that you requested, and I'll just briefly go over it. I mean,
That's
hopefully you all have gone over, having
Yeah.
a chance to look at it. I know you
Yeah.
just received it tonight, but
that's,
with
Good
respect
catch.
to temporary family healthcare structures, if they were to be allowed, they would have to meet zoning requirement, which basically would only include yard or setback requirements, 25 feet from the front and rear, 15 feet from the sides. Initially, I thought lot coverage was included as well, but it's not mentioned in there. So the
Mhm.
enabling authority doesn't mention it. It only mentions setbacks.
Yeah.
So that's what it would be subject to. Flood requirements, it is still considered new construction. It is a structure. It would have to meet the regulatory flood protection elevation, which means if it's in an X or an unshaded X flood zone, it has to be a minimum of 8 feet above sea level.
Mhm.
And then if it's in an AE4, it's also 8. And then if it's in AO or VE, then it would go along with whatever the RFPE is. With respect to the state building code, that would have to be met, including all electrical, plumbing, and mechanical, the trades. They would all have to be done by licensed tradesmen in those trades. I did talk to the building inspector this morning and asked him about what he would like to see if this was something we received an application for. And he indicated that, yes, obviously it does need to be tied down or anchored. And that one suggestion that he made was the helical anchors, the ones that kind of twist down into the ground.
Yeah.
He suggested that, as well as the plans that are submitted for it and the anchoring that's proposed should be certified by an engineer, which around here, it's not uncommon to have engineered plans for something.
Sure.
So those were the suggestions from Kevin Clark, our building inspector. The last bullet is something I think that had it been brought to our attention or had it been brought up at the last meeting, some of the concerns might have been addressed. General Statute 143-139.1, which addresses certification of manufactured buildings, structures, or components by recognized independent testing laboratory, as well as minimum standards for modular homes. Based on this, according to the statute, these structures must be labeled with a North Carolina Modular Construction Validating Stamp. And in order to obtain the North Carolina Modular Construction Validating Stamp, it must meet the NC Modular Construction Appearance requirements as listed below. It addresses roof pitch, eave projection, exterior wall, siding, and roofing materials. So in order for it to even be approved before it comes to the town by the state, it should have that stamp on it and meet all of those requirements. Therefore, a manufactured home would not be allowed because that has its own different type of sticker. So only modular structures are what we're talking about here. It couldn't be a recreational vehicle. It couldn't be a stick-built structure. It has to be a modular structure that meets these requirements. So I think that's I found that a little comforting, actually.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
because based on some of the concerns that were brought up. And if you go and you try to Google temporary family healthcare structures, there's one structure I saw that pop up, and it was a small modular structure, and it was an image in a School of Government blog post about temporary family healthcare structures. But at any rate, those are the requirements that apply.
Right. Yeah, just looking back at the minutes, Robert was commenting on, it has really nothing to do with a mobile home, but could it be a mobile home? The answer is no.
No, it is, yes.
According to this. Well, I mean, I think that cuts through a lot of the concerns that we had at our April meeting. One thing, and this is coming from John Finelli, his comment on line 248 in the minutes was, John stated it would most likely be a caregiver, not a family member living in the temporary structure. And that is not correct, reading the ZTA. It is the impaired person that is residing in the temporary health care facility exclusively.
That's on the property of a relative, to paraphrase.
But that is what the state mandates. That, yeah, I mean, if you look at, let's see here. If you look at the ZTA that we have tonight, line 17 is where it starts off, but actually it's line 20. It says that it has to be transportable, primarily assembled at a location other than its site of installation, and is limited to one occupant who shall be the mentally or physically impaired person. So it's not the caregiver that would be residing in this facility, which I'm not quite sure I understand what in the world the state is trying to achieve with that.
Must be missing something.
Yeah. But
There was a couple things like that to me, like legally, this is so full of holes.
yeah,
But the other thing that I found, that until you get down to line 34, suddenly the relative is the named legal guardian,
mm-hmm.
where it's not mentioned until line 34.
Right.
So you're talking about relatives up here, but suddenly you have to have the named legal guardian,
Mm-hmm.
which you're going into something totally, I mean, legally, this thing to me is full of holes, but I
Well,
think the chances of it ever coming up in Southern Shores is minuscule at the
Well-
best, but
and Wes, what you're basically saying is how you interpret it, the flood requirement, if it's in any flood zone, it's got to come up to 8 feet to meet minimum flood protection ordinance in Southern Shores.
Correct. Yeah, we have the high regulatory standard where we adopted even in X and unshaded X zones, even if it's not a special flood
Right.
hazard area, that, yes, it has to be a minimum of 8 feet above sea level.
So that all of a sudden gets this temporary structure on potentially a temporary foundation to get it up above the flood zone. I mean, I'm with Tony, it's full of holes as far as trying to comply with what the ZTA says has to be state and local requirements. You've pointed out the local requirements as well as the state. So I think our hands are tied with doing anything other than saying, you know, we'll comply if we have to. I mean, what do y'all think?
I'm under the same thing. I mean, I'm not happy with it, but as I said, the chances of something coming up here is minuscule. I think we should comply. And if something comes up, we'll deal with it at that point if it ever does arise. That's the hand they gave us.
Yeah.
And I don't know who built it, who's the brainchild that built it in Raleigh, but that's the way it goes, you know?
Yeah, I just really question how something like this could possibly work in our area, given the constraints of wind and you know, water. So, but I think we're in a spot that it's part of 160D that we have to kind of go along with at the state level, but yet don't have a whole lot of wiggle room as far as what we'd like to see. I mean, I certainly would hope that you know, all building codes would have to be met, that the building inspector has alluded to. And
Did you say they're not to be counted in the impervious surface of a lot?
It's only setbacks.
just setbacks.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And one thing that I noticed that Ben didn't include when he cut and pasted the state ordinance was the very last line on the state ordinance says, what is it? Temporary family health care structures shall be treated as tangible personal property for purposes of taxation. Why he left that out? He got every other word straight off of the North Carolina website. Just a question. Anyway, I mean, I looked at this thing 8 ways from Sunday thinking, how would anybody be able to actually put one of these in our town and comply with all this stuff? And I think the answer's going to be pretty tough. I mean, it's not that we're being, you know, stingy with what we've got here and not compassionate about caring for people, but I'm not quite sure where this originated from, but I guess we got to go along with it. I mean, we really can't interject any other language in there, can we?
According to the town attorney, we have to stick with what the enabling statutes allow.
Yeah.
So is our position to recommend or not approval to the town council?
I think our recommendation would have to be that the state is holding us to account and that we have to approve.
We don't like it.
Well,
With prejudice. We approve with prejudice.
yeah, I think I would certainly say in our recommendation, a motion to recommend this to town council for approval would also include what Wes has given us in the requirements. and certainly enter that into the record as far as these are the conditions that we understand have to be met to even venture into this.
Yes, sir.
So, want to talk about it anymore or just roll on with it? Well, I would entertain a motion to approve this ETA as written by Ben in the state of North Carolina, to recommend approval by town council.
I'll second that.
That was a motion. Tony second.
Okay, you made the motion. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Okay.
Any discussion on that? Did motion make sense, Wes?
Yes, sir.
And then I'll ask for a vote, please. All in favor of sending this motion to approve NC Statute 160D-915 and as written by Ben Gallup in ZTA 2106, say aye. Aye. Opposed? None seen. Okay. Sometimes you just got to take what government gives you, right?
Yes, sir. And I'll remind y'all, we're still taking pieces, as I said earlier in the staff report, we're still taking pieces out from the code update.
Yeah.
And that's why we're having all these state
Yeah.
mandated amendments. That was one of the remaining few.
Yeah. Well, and I think the next order in new business would cover just that, the
Yes, sir.
TCA 2105, which basically deals with conflicts with the state law. So can you just simply read the analysis?
Yes, sir. In 2019, the NC General Assembly enacted North Carolina General Statutes, Chapter 160D, Local Planning and Development Regulation, which consolidated and clarified former Chapters 160A and 153A that address development regulations for municipalities and counties. The chapter became effective January 1, 2021, with the requirement that all municipalities and counties update their ordinances to be compliant with it by July 1, 2021. Due to the town code update project, town staff chose to postpone amending the town code to be compliant with Chapter 160D until the amendments from the town code update project are complete. As a result of that postponement, the town attorney has prepared language in the form of a town code amendment. This is to Chapter 1. This isn't the zoning ordinance, so it's not a zoning text amendment. But he recommended and suggested that the planning board still go through this process in order to get it in. A town code amendment that clarifies that the North Carolina General Statutes, in particular, Chapter 160D, must be satisfied whenever the town code conflicts with, contradicts, or is otherwise inconsistent with the North Carolina General Statutes. The intent of the proposed language is to clarify that although the town has not yet amended the town code to be compliant with Chapter 160D, its provisions will still be followed when applicable.
Thank you, Wes. And I think case in point would be if we didn't take up this temporary health care structure and just didn't recommend moving on, that conflicts with state law. I mean, that's a prime example of what this town code amendment is saying. Does anybody have any issues with the language in this town code amendment?
I personally don't.
No, it looked perfectly fine to me. Town staff has recommended approval of the proposed TCA. I'm sure Ben's looked at this and crafted it to meet our requirements to comply with 160D at the state level. So I would say that we could certainly give our recommendation that town council move this forward. So
I'll make a motion that we approve TCA 2105.
give a second.
Second.
Ed, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor of that motion by Tony, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None seen. Okay. Now, we'll move on down to lot access requirements, ZTA 2107. And this, well, I'll once again call on Wes to give us the analysis and synopsis of what occurred at the last town council meeting.
Yes, sir. The next item on the agenda, ZTA 2107, is an amendment of the town zoning ordinance by amending section 36-95 lot access requirements. At the May 17, 2021 planning board meeting, the board recommended conditional approval of PSP 2101, a preliminary subdivision plat to subdivide the property located at 279 Hillcrest Drive. At the June 1st, 2021 council meeting, the council conditionally approved SPA 2101 and instructed the planning board to recommend a town code amendment or zoning text amendment that would eliminate the possibility of subdividing property that does not have frontage on a public or private street. The proposed amendment to section 36-95 is suggested by town staff, which removes the possibility of creating a new lot or lots that only have frontage on an easement.
I watched the section of that on YouTube at the last town council meeting. I don't know if anybody was in attendance other than town staff here. And I would concur with John Finelli. It was painful. So I think the ZTA, in one simple swell idea, is to strike in line 1 or easement. And it kind of solves what the town council was wrestling with.
Yes, sir.
I mean, am I?
Yeah, I think that's what they requested, and I think that this would address that concern. By taking it out, a lot has to have 30 foot of frontage on a public right of way or a private street. So if you take the situation that we just had, I don't think it wouldn't have been allowed because, I mean.
Wes, if the easement portion of that plot plan that we saw, if that had in fact been made, deeded to the town as a public street or a public right of way, would it then have been allowed?
Well, the easement was, I think the way that the town council ultimately recommended or approved it conditionally is that it has to have something on the plat or a separate legal instrument that dedicates access to it to the public. And it is to be privately maintained with the option for the town to take it over if they choose to at some time, and
I see.
following if it's been requested. But since it's a public easement, it already satisfied that requirement. But it's going to be an improvement. It was just a unique situation because it's not really a street, it's more of an improvement. But it is, it is going to be public or dedicated to the public. So it's not, if the town were to take over at some point, I guess that it would, it would probably cease to be an easement and become part of right of way. That answers you, if that's your question in that answer.
Right.
But I would defer to the attorney as well on that.
they could have done what they did, they would have just had to do it a different way, basically, not with an easement, but by dedicating that as a public street.
But the town would have to allow it first of all, for it to be a public right,
Accept it.
for it to be a public right of way. The town would have to accept it, exactly.
And probably require the developer to improve it
Yes.
to whatever town standards there are. But, yeah, okay.
So how does it address the setbacks for the original lot?
The council ended up approving it so that it was determined that the town cannot require setbacks off of the easement. It has to come from the property line based on the zoning definitions of yard, front, side, or in this case, side. So the side setback does only come from that property line, not the easement line.
So once that property line's there, it's there forever, huh?
Which property line?
The easement is not, in other words, the original property line is still the reference point?
Yes, that's where the setback, that's where you take your setback from, 15 feet from that,
Even though there's,
even though there's an easement
he
there,
could
Yeah.
never use that.
and they can never use it.
But the house can come right up to the street/easement
Yeah.
because the setback's another 15 feet. I
30
mean,
feet.
setbacks in the middle, is it side or front, or what is that considered?
The
On
setback,
that, what the town council
what the
approved,
town council approved, the setback will be in the easement,
right? Yeah.
about 15 feet into it,
Yeah,
or 15 feet into
Sure.
it, because it's a 30-foot easement.
so they've got a hard surface easement, and they can put a house right up to the edge of the pavement.
Well, since that lot is already improved, they wouldn't be
Yeah.
allowed to, because you're only allowed one single-family dwelling per structure. But if somebody were to tear that house down and wanted to build it,
That's what I'm
then
talking about, when you
that-
tear that house down.
that could be a possibility. There would be no distance from that easement that I'm aware of. Not from the zoning ordinance. There may be something
Right.
that they could put in the deed or on the plat when it's recorded. I don't know. But as far as the town is concerned with the setback requirement, it can only be applied from the property line, not from the easement.
So in the event that the house was torn down, someone built another one and put it right up against the easement with a 3-foot overhang on the eaves.
Keep the street clean.
Park the car under it.
Yeah. Well, I certainly think that something as simple as striking through or easement is about as easy a solution as we could possibly recommend to town council to eliminate doing this, because there are some other large tracts down in that area. I think the owner on this particular piece of property kind of got in under the fence, and fair enough, you know. We didn't have anything in place to, you know, kind of alleviate the, you know, subdividing stuff that really wasn't the intent, those great big lots. I know Warren Davis's property there is a huge, beautiful piece of property, and he would never have intended 2 houses to be on that property. So I mean, my question on this, is this crafted by Ben?
No, sir. That's suggested by me.
Did you run this under his nose
I
at
did
all?
not. No, sir.
All right, well, I mean, I don't see anything wrong with it, but I would certainly say that I would be willing to recommend it with, maybe Ben taking a quick look at, isn't that usually how it works? Or,
Yeah, he would receive it before it goes to council. Yes,
Right.
sir.
okay,
Yes, sir.
well then, I think we could certainly approve the ZTA with the condition that the attorney says it's okay. I
Yes,
certainly
sir.
don't see anything wrong with it.
Anything wrong with it at all?
Okay. Then I will entertain a motion to approve ZTA 2107 as written with the condition or with the suggestion or concern that town attorney make sure that that accomplishes what town council is looking for.
I'll second.
And I've just made the motion again, Wes. I keep,
Linda seconded.
and Linda seconded it. So is there any further discussion on that? Well, then I will take a vote on approval of ZTA 2107 as the motion was put forth. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? None seen? Okay. Well, we'll scratch public comment and move on to planning board comment. So I'll turn it over to you, Tony, on
Yeah,
that.
this is something I've been mulling over for a while. And I think if you would like to address this, this is great. In chapter 26, or 26, I think it is, municipal codes, it goes in a pretty long length about trash pickup and trash collection. I've noticed that, and the ones that have lived here for a while, there's multiple trash cans to be picked up. The green one is not for recycling, which is counterintuitive. The green one's for trash. The brown one is for garbage. No, yes,
Recycle?
recycling.
The old brown.
Yeah, the old brown one's for recycling. Then you have the black ones. Then you have it brought out where people bring them out. Everybody brings it out on Monday, let's be honest. I think the vast majority of renters bring it out. My suggestion is that I think we could add to the municipal code where the trash containers have to be labeled by the property owners. Where the green one has to be labeled trash only. The brown one has to be labeled recyclable only. What I find, what I found in my block, and I'm in a very small block, what I found is that the renters don't know the difference. So what happens, they'll bring them out, they'll leave them there, and they'll have the trash in the recyclable one, and so that sits out there because it's recyclable, and it's not picked up on Monday or Friday. It's picked up on Wednesday, but it's really full of trash. And what happens, we have a lot of animals. They get into it. It's all over the street because people don't bring it back. And I understand that. We're not going to change that. But what I think would be a good thing is to have these in the municipal code that they must be labeled by the homeowners, where they could write it. And also, one of the pluses of this situation is, right now, on the recyclables, they're picking up trash. What happens to the trash? It goes into the landfill. The recycle company, it's Bay still, right? Bay is probably losing money on this situation because they're picking up trash they're not picking up. So I think it would benefit the town. I think it would benefit the Bay recyclable, and it would take little effort. I've tried calling the real estate companies, but unless you're paying them something or renting something, you're talking to a black hole. Because I've pulled up and actually sent photos of trash all over the place and said, please come and pick it up, and they don't. We'll pass it on, and it goes into the black hole. So I think it's a minor item, but I think in the long run, eventually, it might make the town look better. It would make the town cleaner. It'll help the recycle company. And all it is, it's a very simple thing. Have them mark it. And I would bet, I shouldn't bet, but I would say that I wouldn't be surprised if Bay Recycle doesn't have actual things that they would be willing to give the town. They might even have stickers to put on these things because it would benefit them as much as it would benefit the town. And I think it's a win-win situation. And let's face it, they don't bring the trash cans back, so not everybody's going to comply. But if you have some compliance is better than no compliance. And it's just a thought maybe to think about for the next meeting, if you think this is a good thing. If you don't, that's fine too.
Now, I feel your pain. I've made plenty of calls to real estate companies between here and my house on Bayberry Trail.
Yeah.
When I come by there on Sunday, it just infuriates the hell out of me to see trash outside of a receptacle that you know the animals are going to get into that night. And the first thing I do when I get home is I pick up the phone, I call the real estate company, I get the person's name that I'm talking to first and last and say, I live here. Your company needs to send somebody out here and pick this trash up. We got a mess out here. And I would say about half the time it works. But it is really, I don't know what the solution is, Tony. I would say certainly I would be in favor of making it, put some teeth into it so that the real estate companies understand that if they're habitual offenders, that somebody's got to pay. There's a civil fine involved. You go to court, you pay the fine, kind of like a traffic ticket. I mean, what the heck's wrong with ticketing somebody for not adhering to an ordinance that might, like you're saying, might need to show up in the.
Yeah, what I'm focusing on is labeling the trash cans. I think labeling the trash cans may help because people they don't know. You know, they're putting it in the wrong can, and especially if they put it in the wrong can, it sits out there for 3 days and the animals get into it. As far as complaining, Southern Shores, if I'm not mistaken, and Wes knows this much better than I think it's complaint driven.
Sure.
It's complaint driven. So for us to complain about a particular thing, we have to come in. Wes, am I correct in this, and sign a complaint? Is that still the procedure?
We are mostly complaint driven. If it's
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. So, you know, the police aren't going to drive by and say, hey,
No.
they're in violation. It has to be complaint driven. And I understand that. But I'm trying to do small steps, you know, and label the cans trash and recycle. I mean, it's not that hard to do. And I don't understand.
Well, let me ask this.
Yeah.
We've had trash cans forever.
Yeah. So
I still
I've
have
got the
the
original.
brown. Yeah, I got the brown and I got the green.
Nobody's run
I don't
over
know what-
mine yet.
And then there's a yellow and green, I
Yeah.
believe.
Yeah.
And so the first thing is, oh yeah, there's blue. So it's like, that's a, you know, we don't have a uniform trash
No.
container color.
Mm-mm.
It's very difficult to put any kind of label on a
Plastic,
plastic
yeah. 'cause
trash
it
can
goes.
because they don't stay on them.
You know, a stencil.
a stencil, you could stencil, or even,
Hey.
I've seen houses with the brown and green like I have, where they've actually written on their trash only, or recycle only. And it's also confusing if you look at the side of your can, the trash can, it says recycle trash.
Yeah.
So that even makes it more confusing because, you know, a renter will come down on the older cans, that's what it says on the side. So I think, you know, putting it out that it would be something, you know, like even in the newsletter, you know, like the town now has a new municipal code, please label your trash can. And it could get out in that methodology.
Well, would you be willing to take up this with town council?
Sure.
At their meeting and represent us as a planning board and say, we've talked about it and we certainly would entertain looking at something that maybe we could craft that would put a little bit more teeth in it and provide for receptacles. I mean, even if it's something that, can get handed out here at town hall. I mean, people come up here all day long and get parking passes. Give them a stencil that says trash. I mean, I've made my own
Yeah.
on my family's stuff. There's 15 cans over there at those 4 houses that oceanfront houses that my family owns. And what I've done even a step further is write 3 feet between cans. You see them
Yeah,
bunched
they're
up
up against each other.
or in a circle. Those poor garbage men, I don't know how in the world they could get anything done, but I made my own stencil and it was a science experiment at first, thinking, will these people put these cans out 3 feet apart? By God, they did. They right by there. My family's cans were 3 feet apart. The renters paid attention. So it's not something out of space to ask.
Yeah, again, it's just a suggestion. I think if you get 25% compliance, that's 25%
Hey,
compliance. Right now you're getting 0%
Yeah,
compliance.
and I think the talking points would be what Ed said, there's no continuity between the different cans. We need, a stencil would take care of, what color can you have if you've got recycle and trash. And then, maybe lean on the real estate companies to get the information out to the renters.
I've tried that. Real estate companies.
It's a long shot on that, but
Yeah.
So Andy, since Tony is going to champion the education portion, which is, you're going to champion the teeth portion?
I would say,
This is a two-pronged
Yeah.
issue.
Well,
There are 2 layers to it.
yeah,
Tony's is about
exactly.
educating people.
I would certainly be willing to, read what the current zoning provisions are as far as trash and bulk collection and dig in with town council on that front. But I would certainly say that, if you don't mind representing us at the July, when is the next council meeting?
It's July 6th, and the solid waste chapter is chapter 26,
Yeah,
24.
26,
It's
yeah.
not zoning, it's 26.
Here, it's 26. For instance, in chapter 24, you don't have to look it up, but in chapter 24, there's a municipal ordinance that says every house has to have an address. So there is precedent that they said every house has to have X. And
Has to
there
have-
is,
A mailbox as well.
yeah, and there is compliance with that. So that it's not that you're coming out and saying, hey, we're telling every house, there is precedent concerning this. So, it's just something it's been bothering me and,
I feel your pain, man. You ask my wife, I've been standing on that soapbox for a long time.
Yeah.
It drives me nuts to have a nice day at the beach, come home on Saturday or Sunday evening and go, good God, look at this mess that's gonna happen.
so that's July 7th, Wes,
July 6th.
July 6th. How come
Well,
7th?
If you can just, and, maybe you and I'll talk, Tony, before then.
Sure.
And just kind of get a list of talking points that you maybe make a presentation to town council. And then say that we as a planning board would certainly be willing to look into, any kind of ordinance that might help this along.
Okay.
So
Okay,
I think
thank
that
you.
would work, yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Anybody else have any comment? Linda? Okay. Well, have you got any announcements for us, Wes?
Yes, sir. The next meeting is July 19th. And at this point, you have one certain agenda item, and that is the Marketplace Shopping Center is going to be proposing to make some changes to some of their storefronts. So you all be getting it'll be a site plan review.
Right.
You all will be getting the site plans here shortly.
So you think it will definitely be at the July 19th meeting?
Yes, sir.
Mhm.
That's on the agenda.
Okay.
And we may be bringing more text amendments. We'll see how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
And there's possibly the solid waste discussion that Tony just
Yeah.
brought up as well, depending on what council
Well,
decides.
okay. Well, if no one else has any business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
I'll second that. Second one. Okay.
Vote.
Vote.
In favor?
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? None seen. Adjourn.
Has anybody ever opposed an adjournment?
I doubt it. I
Wes,
doubt
has
it.
anybody ever opposed an adjournment? I don't know.